The Galactic Commerce Station, Helix 7, floated in the cold darkness of space like a jewel surrounded by nothing. And Captain Daniel Harris watched the stars through the observation window while he held a cup of coffee in his hand. He was 42 years old, with gray hair at his temples, and eyes that had seen too much war and too much death. But his hands remained steady, and his voice remained calm no matter what happened around him. "Captain, the refueling process is complete," Lisa Grant said as she walked up behind him. Her boots clicking against the metal floor. Lisa was his second in command, a former military intelligence officer who had joined his crew 3 years ago. And Daniel trusted her more than anyone else in the galaxy. "Good," Daniel replied without turning around. "How is Kevin handling his first deep space assignment?" "He is nervous but capable," Lisa answered with a small smile. "It reminds me of myself when I was young." Kevin Moore was only 24 years old, fresh from the academy and eager to prove himself. And this was his first time so far from Earth. The Starling was a small cargo vessel, nothing special compared to the massive warships and luxury cruisers that passed through Helix 7. But it was home to Daniel and his crew of 12. He had been running freight routes along the border for 15 years. And he knew every station and every shortcut in this sector of space. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, built by 7 different species working together over 100 years ago. And it served as neutral ground where anyone could trade and negotiate without fear of attack. Today, the docking bays were full of ships from a dozen worlds, and the corridors buzzed with aliens of every shape and size going about their business. Daniel finally turned away from the window and walked toward the command center with Lisa following close behind. "Anything interesting on the sensors?" he asked. "Nothing unusual," she replied. "Standard traffic, standard communications, standard everything." But even as she spoke those words, an alarm began to sound somewhere in the distance. Daniel stopped walking and listened, his instincts telling him that something was very wrong. The alarm grew louder, and suddenly the station's internal communication system crackled to life. "Attention all vessels," a panicked voice announced. "Emergency evacuation protocols are now in effect. Repeat. Emergency evacuation protocols are now in effect." Daniel looked at Lisa and saw his own confusion reflected in her eyes. "What is happening?" she asked. Before he could answer, a Valori trader came running past them, his 4 legs carrying him faster than any human could move. Daniel grabbed the alien by one of his arms and stopped him. "What is going on?" Daniel demanded. The Valori's large eyes were filled with terror, and his translator device struggled to keep up with his rapid speech. "The Devourer comes," the alien gasped. "The Ancient One, the Eater of Worlds, the end of all things. What are you talking about?" Lisa asked, but the Valori pulled free from Daniel's grip and continued running toward the docking bay, leaving them with no answers. Daniel and Lisa exchanged a look and then started moving toward the station's command center at a quick pace. When they arrived, they found Chaos Station Commander Yethris, a tall Molkari diplomat with blue skin and silver eyes, was shouting orders at his staff while dozens of screens displayed images of ships fleeing in every direction. "Commander," Daniel called out, "what is the situation?" Yethris turned to look at him, and Daniel saw something he had never seen on a Molkari face before: fear, pure and absolute fear. "Human," Yethris said in a shaking voice, "you need to leave. You need to leave right now. Take your ship and run as far as you can. Not until you tell me what we are running from." Daniel replied firmly. Yethris pointed at the largest screen on the wall, and Daniel looked up to see something that made his breath catch in his throat. It was enormous. A creature the size of a moon was emerging from hyperspace, its body a twisted mass of flesh and tentacles and glowing eyes that seemed to stare in every direction at once. "What is that thing?" Lisa whispered. "The Kethvoran." Yethris answered. It is older than most civilizations. Older than the first starships, older than recorded history. And it feeds on intelligent life. As they watched, the creature opened what might have been a mouth, and a sound filled the station now. Not a sound, a voice. It spoke directly into their minds, bypassing ears and translators and cutting straight into their thoughts. Kneel, the voice commanded. Surrender your vessels and your flesh. Feed the eternal hunger. Bow before me and your deaths will be swift. All around the command center, aliens of every species fell to their knees, some crying, some screaming, some simply staring with empty eyes as the psychic pressure crushed their will to resist. Daniel felt the voice pushing against his mind, like a weight trying to force him down. But he remained standing. He had felt worse. He had survived worse. Lisa grabbed his arm to steady herself. Her face pale, but her jaw set with determination. 17 civilizations. Yethris moaned from where he had fallen to his knees. 17 species wiped from existence because they refused to submit. Please, human. Please just kneel. Daniel looked at the screen again, watching as thousands of ships powered down their weapons and engines in surrender. The creature's many eyes seemed to scan the fleet, counting its meal. And then those eyes stopped. They focused on one ship. Starling. Daniel felt the creature's attention lock onto him like a predator spotting prey that did not run. That one, the voice echoed in his mind. That small thing defies me. That small thing does not kneel. Bring it to me. Lisa looked at Daniel with wide eyes. It noticed us, she said. Daniel took a sip of his coffee, which had somehow remained in his hand through all of this. Good, he said calmly. I was hoping it would. Commander Yethris stared at the human with disbelief. You are insane, the Molkari whispered. You are completely insane. Daniel smiled. And there was something in that smile that made even the terrified aliens around him feel a chill run down their spines. Maybe, he admitted, but that thing just made a very big mistake. He set down his coffee cup and straightened his jacket. It told a human to kneel. The Kethvoran extended one of its massive tendrils toward Helix 7, and the shadow it cast was large enough to cover the entire station in darkness. Daniel watched through the command center's main screen as the appendage moved closer, each second bringing it nearer to the hull. It wants the defiant ones, Yethris said, his voice trembling as he struggled back to his feet. It wants you to present yourself. Human, please. If you surrender now, it might spare the rest of us. Has surrendering ever saved anyone from that thing? Daniel asked without looking away from the screen. The Molkari commander fell silent, and his silence was answer enough. That is what I thought, Daniel said. He turned to Lisa, who had recovered her composure and now stood with her arms crossed and her eyes sharp. Pull up everything we have on this creature, he ordered. Historical records, military files, anything and everything. Already on it, she replied as her fingers danced across a nearby console within seconds. Data began scrolling across the screen, and Daniel read it with growing interest. The Kethvoran had been terrorizing the galaxy for over 10,000 years, appearing without warning, demanding submission, and consuming any species that refused to obey. 17 civilizations had chosen to fight. 17 civilizations no longer existed. The creature fed on more than flesh. The records indicated it fed on fear and despair, and the psychic energy of minds breaking under its power. Captain, Kevin's voice came through the communication system, sounding young and afraid. The creature is scanning our ship specifically. It seems confused by something. Daniel tapped his earpiece. Confused by what? He asked. I do not know, Kevin answered. But its scanning patterns keep returning to our biological signatures, like it cannot understand what we are. Lisa looked up from her console with a thoughtful expression. Humans are relatively new to the galactic stage, she said. We have only been out here for about 200 years. Maybe this thing has never encountered our species before. That would explain the confusion. Daniel agreed. Suddenly, the psychic voice returned. And this time, it was directed solely at Daniel. Bow before me. Small thing, the Kethvoran commanded. Your fear feeds me. Your submission sustains me. Kneel and worship the eternal hunger. Daniel felt the pressure increase tenfold, pushing against his thoughts, trying to find the cracks in his mind where terror could take root around him. Aliens who had managed to stand fell again, clutching their heads and crying out in pain. But Daniel remained upright. He had known fear his entire life. He had grown up poor, in a city that did not care about poor children. He had fought in wars where friends died in his arms. He had buried his daughter when she was only 7 years old. He had watched his wife walk away because he could not stop blaming himself. Fear was an old companion, and Daniel had long ago learned to carry it without letting it carry him. Your tricks do not work on me, he said out loud. Knowing somehow that the creature could hear him, the psychic pressure faltered, and Daniel sensed something that might have been surprise coming from the ancient being. You do not fear, the Kethvoran said, and for the first time, its voice held a note of uncertainty. All things fear, all things break. Why do you not break? Because I am human, Daniel replied simply. He turned to Lisa. Open a channel to that thing, he ordered. I want to talk to it directly, and I want everyone on this station to hear. Lisa hesitated for only a moment before nodding and activating the communication systems. Channel open, she announced. Daniel stepped forward until he stood directly beneath the main screen, looking up at the image of the creature that had destroyed 17 civilizations. You want me to bow? He said, his voice calm and steady. You come here with your size and your power and your threats, and you expect me to fall on my knees like everyone else. The creature's many eyes focused on him through the screen, and Daniel could feel its attention like a physical weight. All things bow, the Kethvoran declared. All things submit. It is the natural order. The strong consume the weak. You are weak. Therefore, you will be consumed. See, that is where you made your mistake, Daniel said with a small smile forming on his lips. Commander Yethris stared at the human like he had lost his mind. What are you doing? The Malkari hissed. You cannot antagonize it. You will doom us all. But Daniel ignored him and continued speaking to the creature. You think size makes you strong, he said. You think age makes you powerful. You have lived for 10,000 years and destroyed 17 species, and you believe that makes you invincible. He paused and let his smile grow wider. But you have never met humans before. The Kethvoran laughed, and the sound of its amusement echoed through every mind on the station. You are small, it mocked. You are young. Your species has existed for barely a moment compared to my eternal hunger. What could you possibly do to threaten me? Daniel looked at Lisa and nodded. She understood immediately and began preparing a data transmission. Let me show you, Daniel said to the creature. Let me show you what humans are. Let me show you what we have done to every predator that ever threatened us. Show me then. Small thing, the Kethvoran replied with arrogant confidence. Show me your tiny history. Show me your insignificant struggles. And then bow before the only power that matters. Daniel's smile never wavered. You asked for it, he said, and then the transmission began. The data stream flowed from the Starling's computers directly into the Kethvoran's ancient mind, and the creature absorbed it eagerly, confident that it would find nothing but weakness and fear in the history of this young species. It was wrong. The first images showed Earth, a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, and the creature saw the harsh conditions that had shaped humanity. It saw the ice ages that had frozen the world and killed millions. It saw the droughts that had turned fertile land into desert and starved entire populations. It saw the diseases that had swept across continents and left mountains of corpses in their wake. Your world tried to kill you, the Kethvoran observed. How did you survive? We adapted, Daniel answered. We always adapt. The images continued. And now they showed humanity's wars. The creature watched as humans slaughtered each other with swords and spears. Then with guns and cannons, then with bombs that could level entire cities. It saw the trenches of the First Great War, where men lived in mud and blood for years, dying by the thousands for a few meters of ground. It saw the concentration camps of the Second Great War, where humans committed horrors against their own kind that made even the ancient predator feel something close to disgusted. Saw the mushroom clouds rising over 2 cities, killing hundreds of thousands in an instant. And it understood that humans had created weapons capable of destroying their own world. You are monsters, the Kethvoran said, and there was a hint of respect in its voice now. You destroy yourselves with more efficiency than I ever could. We are survivors, Daniel corrected. We do whatever it takes to survive, even if that means becoming monsters ourselves. The data stream shifted, and now it showed something different. It showed humans hunting. The creature watched as early humans tracked wolves across frozen tundras, following them for days without rest until the predators collapsed from exhaustion. It saw humans driving mammoths off cliffs, using teamwork and planning to kill beasts 10 times their size. It saw the last tigers falling to human rifles, the last wolves being driven from their ancestral lands, the last bears retreating to the few corners of Earth where humans had not yet spread. Every predator that ever threatened us, Daniel said quietly. We hunted them down. We studied their weaknesses. We found ways to kill them. And then we did not stop until they were gone. The Kethvoran's confidence began to waver. You are persistent, it admitted. We are relentless, Daniel corrected again. There is a difference. Lisa added her own files to the transmission now. Classified military documents that were never meant to be seen by alien eyes. The creature absorbed them and learned about Project Retribution, thousands of automated weapons platforms hidden on dead worlds throughout the galaxy. Dormant, but ready to activate if Earth ever fell. Sleeper ships carrying millions of humans in cryogenic suspension, traveling to distant stars that would not be reached for centuries. Secret bases buried deep within asteroids and moons, stocked with weapons and supplies and soldiers who had volunteered to spend their lives waiting for an enemy that might never come. You prepared for extinction, the Kethvoran said. And now its voice held something that might have been concern. We prepare for everything, Daniel replied. We have a saying on Earth. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. And humans have been planning for the worst since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. The creature reached deeper into Daniel's mind, searching for the fear that it knew must be there. The terror that all living things felt when faced with their own mortality. It found memories of war, of friends dying, of blood and fire and screaming. It found the memory of a hospital room, a small girl lying in a bed, machines beeping as her life slipped away. It found the memory of a woman walking out a door, leaving behind a broken man who could not find the words to make her stay. But beneath all of that pain, beneath all of that loss, the Kethvoran found something it had never encountered before. It found resolve, cold, hard, unbreakable resolve. You have suffered, the creature said, puzzled by what it was seeing. We all suffer, Daniel answered. Suffering is part of being human, but we do not let it break us. We let it make us stronger. Commander Yethris and the Tirus and the other aliens in the command center were watching this exchange with growing amazement. They had never seen anyone stand against the Kethvoran like this. They had never imagined it was possible. Your history is impressive, the Kethvoran finally said, but it changes nothing. I am older than your species. I am larger than your fleets. I am more powerful than anything you have ever faced. You are not the first to say that, Daniel replied calmly. And what happened to the others who said it? The creature asked mockingly. Daniel's smile returned. And this time there was something dangerous in it. They are extinct now, he said. Every predator, every empire, every force of nature that tried to destroy humanity, they are all gone. And we are still here. The Kethvoran fell silent for 10,000 years. It had never hesitated for 10,000 years. It had never doubted. But now, looking at this small human who refused to bow, who refused to fear, who stood before it with nothing but conviction and spite, the ancient predator felt something it had not felt in millennia: uncertainty. You cannot defeat me, it said. But the words sounded less like a statement and more like a question. Daniel looked up at the screen, at the moon-sized horror that had devoured 17 civilizations. And he laughed. Maybe not, he admitted. But we can damn sure try, and even if we fail, our children will try. And their children after them, for 100 generations if necessary. He leaned forward, and his voice dropped to a whisper that somehow everyone could hear. We never stop. We never forget, and we never forgive. That is what it means to be human. The silence that followed Daniel's words stretched across the station like a held breath. And every being on Helix 7 waited to see what would happen next. Kethvoran's massive form pulsed with dark energy as it processed what it had learned. And when it finally spoke again, its voice was filled with cold fury. Enough, the creature declared. I have entertained this defiance long enough. I will destroy your homeworld as an example. I will consume Earth and every human on it. And the galaxy will remember what happens to those who refuse to bow. Daniel did not flinch. He did not step back. Instead, he smiled. It was not a nervous smile, or a brave smile, or even a defiant smile. It was the smile of a man who had just heard exactly what he wanted to hear. Earth? He said with genuine amusement in his voice. You want to attack Earth? The creature paused, confused by this reaction. Your homeworld will burn, it repeated, as if Daniel had not understood the threat. Go ahead, Daniel replied, his smile growing wider. Attack Earth, destroy it completely. Kill every human on the planet. Commander Yethris stared at the human in horror. What are you saying? The Molkari demanded. You would sacrifice your own world? Daniel ignored him and continued speaking to the Kethvoran. Earth is important to us, he admitted. It is where we come from. It is our history and our heritage. But it is not our only home, not anymore. He gestured to Lisa, who brought up a star map on the main screen. There, Daniel pointed. And there, and there, and there. Hundreds of points of light appeared on the map, scattered across the galaxy like seeds thrown by a careless hand. Human colonies, Lisa explained. Some large, some small, some so hidden that even we do not know exactly where they are. The Kethvoran studied the map, and for the first time, it seemed to understand the scale of what it was facing. You spread yourselves across the stars. It observed, like a virus. Daniel agreed cheerfully. We are everywhere, and you cannot find us all. You cannot kill us all, and the survivors will never stop hunting you. Lisa quietly activated a beacon on her console, sending a simple coded message across every human communication channel in the Galaxy Omega contingency. Across thousands of light years, human vessels received the signal and understood its meaning on colony worlds. Defense systems powered up and soldiers reported to their stations on research stations. Scientists stopped their work and began activating hidden weapons on sleeper ships drifting through the void. Automated systems checked their cargo of frozen warriors and confirmed that all was ready. Kevin's voice came through the communication system. Filled with awe, Captain, he reported. I am picking up responses from everywhere. Human ships are powering weapons. Colonies are going to battle stations. Even the deep space probes are activating. Good, Daniel said simply. The Kethvoran reached deeper into Daniel's mind, searching for the trick, the bluff, the hidden fear that had to be there. It found the memory of his daughter again, a little girl with his eyes and her mother's smile. And it felt his grief like an ocean of pain. It found the memory of his wife leaving, the door closing behind her. The silence that followed it found years of loneliness, of drinking too much, of staring at the stars and wondering if there was any point to continuing. But beneath all of that darkness, it found something else, a decision, a choice made in the depths of despair. The creature saw Daniel standing in front of a mirror, a gun in his hand, ready to end everything, and then it saw him put the gun down, not because he was no longer in pain, not because he had found hope, but because he was too stubborn to give the universe the satisfaction of breaking him. You have nothing left to lose, the Kethvoran realized. I lost everything years ago, Daniel confirmed. And that makes me the most dangerous thing you have ever faced. A human with nothing to fear and nothing to protect, except the people standing beside me. The creature tried a different approach. The others, it said, referring to the aliens on the station. They are not your people. They are not even your species. Why would you risk everything to protect them? Daniel looked around at the Malkari, the Valori, the Vesic, and the dozen other species who were watching him with wide eyes. Because that is what humans do, he answered. We protect the weak. We fight for the helpless. We stand against the monsters, even when we know we cannot win. He turned back to the screen, and his voice rose so that everyone could hear. You feed on fear, he declared. You have built your entire existence on making other species afraid. But we transformed our fear into something else long ago. What? The Kethvoran demanded. Spite, Daniel said with satisfaction. Pure, beautiful, unstoppable spite. We will burn ourselves to ashes just to take you with us. We will sacrifice everything just to prove that you can be defied. That is the human way. Around the command center, the aliens who had been cowering on their knees began to rise. They looked at Daniel with something new in their eyes. Not fear, hope. You made a mistake coming here, Daniel continued. Not because you cannot kill us. You probably can. But because you showed the galaxy that you can be challenged. You showed them that someone can stand against you and refuse to bow. He gestured at the aliens around him. Look at them, he said. They are not afraid anymore. They are watching a human defy a god. And they are starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they can defy you too. The Kethvoran's rage shook the station, and alarms began blaring as the creature's tentacles tightened around the hull. I will kill you, it snarled. I will kill all of you. Daniel's smile never wavered. You can try, he said. But even if you succeed, you will never be as powerful as you were before today. Because now everyone knows the truth. He leaned forward, and his final words cut through the creature's fury like a blade. You can be beaten. The Kethvoran attacked with all the fury of a god who had never been defied. And its massive tendrils crashed against Helix 7 like hammers striking glass. The station shook violently, throwing people to the ground and sending equipment flying across rooms. Daniel grabbed onto a console to steady himself and shouted into his communicator. All human ships. This is Captain Harris. Execute attack pattern Omega. I repeat. Execute attack pattern Omega across the space around the station. Dozens of small human vessels burst into motion. They were tiny compared to the creature they faced, like insects attacking a whale. But they moved with purpose and precision that spoke of years of training and preparation. They are actually attacking it, Commander Yethris gasped, watching the battle unfold on the screens that still functioned. We told you, Lisa said as she worked frantically at her console. We never stop. The human ships fired their weapons at specific points on the Kethvoran's body, targeting the same locations over and over again. What are they doing? A Valori officer asked. Their weapons are too weak to penetrate its hide. They're not trying to penetrate it, Lisa explained. They're testing it, finding the weak spots, learning its patterns. Daniel opened a channel to the alien vessels that had surrendered. This is Captain Harris of the human cargo vessel Starling, he announced. We are engaging the enemy. Any ship that wants to fight is welcome to join us. Any ship that wants to run should run now while they still can. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a Malkari warship powered up its weapons. This is Captain Varath of the Malkari vessel Bright Dawn. A voice responded. We will fight beside you. Human. Another ship activated. Then another. Then a dozen more Valori trading fleets standing by. Came one message. Vesic patrol ships ready to engage. Came another, within minutes. A ragtag fleet of alien vessels had formed around the human ships, taking their positions and awaiting orders. How do we fight this thing? Captain Virath asked. We have tried before. We have always failed. Lisa transmitted the data they had gathered during Daniel's confrontation with the creature. Its outer shell is nearly impervious, she explained. But there are gaps between the armor plates where the flesh is exposed. And the central mass where its brain is located has the weakest protection. We need to get weapons inside it, Daniel added. Not just damage the outside. The Kethvoran screamed in rage as the combined fleet began its assault, and its tentacles lashed out in every direction, destroying ships by the dozen. But for every ship that fell, 3 more took its place of Valori. Captain sacrificed his vessel to distract one of the tentacles while a human bomber slipped through and delivered its payload to a weak point A. The Vesic cruiser held position in front of the creature's maw, drawing fire while smaller ships attacked from behind the Malkari provided shield coverage. Their advanced technology protecting the more vulnerable human vessels. It is working, Kevin reported excitedly from the Starling. The creature is taking damage. Its movements are slowing. But Daniel could see that it was not enough. The Kethvoran was hurt. But it was still fighting, still killing, still consuming any ship that got too close. We need to hit the brain, he said. We need to get a ship inside it and detonate the reactor. Lisa's head snapped toward him, and he saw understanding and fear in her eyes. The Starling is small enough to breach the outer membrane, she said quietly. I know, Daniel replied. He turned to his crew, the 11 people who had followed him across the galaxy and trusted him with their lives. I need volunteers to stay with me, he said. Everyone else should evacuate to the station. This is going to be a one-way trip. Kevin stepped forward immediately. I am staying. Captain. No, Daniel said firmly. You are too young. You have too much life ahead of you. With respect. Sir, Kevin replied. That is my choice to make one by one. The other crew members volunteered, until all 12 of them stood ready to die. Damn fools, Daniel muttered, but there was pride in his voice. Every one of you. The Starling broke away from the main fleet and accelerated toward the Kethvoran S Central. Mass tentacles reached for them, but the alien ships covered their approach, sacrificing themselves to clear a path. We are approaching the membrane, Lisa announced. 30 seconds to breach. Daniel gripped the arms of his captain's chair and watched the creature's flesh grow larger in the view screen. It has been an honor serving with all of you, he said. The honor was ours. Captain, Lisa replied. The Starling hit the membrane and punched through. Entering the creature's body inside was a nightmare of tissue and fluid and pulsing organs. And the ship shuddered as biological defenses tried to crush it. Reactor overload in 60 seconds, Lisa reported. We have 1 minute to get out. None of us are getting out, Daniel said. But before he could say anything else, Lisa was out of her seat and moving toward him, she grabbed his arm and dragged him toward the escape pod bay. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Saving your life," she answered. "The galaxy needs to see a human survive this. They need to see that we can win and live to tell about it. I am not leaving my crew. We are not asking for permission." Kevin and the other crew members formed a wall between Daniel and the bridge, pushing him backward toward the escape pod. "Go, Captain," Kevin said with a smile that was far too calm for someone about to die. "Tell them what we did here. Tell them that humans do not bow." Before Daniel could protest further, Lisa shoved him into the pod and sealed the door. "Take care of yourself, old man," she said through the intercom. "And maybe try to be happy for once." The pod launched, and Daniel was thrown back in his seat as it accelerated away from the Starling through the small window. He watched his ship reach the creature's brain, watched the reactor explode in a ball of white fire. He watched the Kethvoran, the devourer of worlds, the ancient terror that had consumed 17 civilizations, died. A creature's death scream echoed through the minds of every being in the sector. And then there was silence. Daniel floated in his escape pod, alone in the darkness, surrounded by the scattered remains of the monster that had demanded he bow. A Molkari rescue ship found him an hour later when they brought him aboard. The alien crew looked at him with expressions of reverence and wonder. A young Valori child approached him cautiously. "Why did you smile at the monster?" she asked. "Were you not afraid?" Daniel thought about his crew, about Lisa and Kevin and all the others who had given their lives. He thought about his daughter, about his wife, about all the things he had lost and all the things he had fought for, because it expected me to be afraid, he finally answered. And nothing makes a human more dangerous than being told what to do. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across the galaxy. The species that stood against a god, the fleet that refused to bow, the captain who smiled at extinction, and one other predatory entities heard the tale and quietly changed their courses, avoiding human space, avoiding human allies, avoiding anything that might draw the attention of the species that have killed the unkillable. Daniel returned to Earth eventually, to the small apartment where he had lived alone for so many years. He looked at the photo of his daughter on his shelf, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to cry. "Kept the monsters away," he whispered. "Just like I promised." Outside his window, the stars shone bright and cold and endless, and somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between worlds, the legend of humanity continued to grow. The species that transformed fear into spite, species that never stopped fighting, the species that smiled at the end of all things and said no, never again. Would the galaxy wonder what humans were capable of? Now they knew. Now everyone knew.